Hello everyone, welcome to episode 140 of Show For You, where today we'll be going over Dragon Ball Z Cooler's Revenge. This movie starts off with actually the last movie, like the conclusion of the last movie, where we see as Bardock is facing up against Frieza, and ultimately we see as he's obliterated, and then we actually see that we're in the perspective of what appears to be a Frieza ship. However, the ship that we are in is in fact under the ownership of Cooler, who is Frieza's older brother. Yeah, so we see this all play out and all. Then he mentions about how Frieza's kind of soft. He's too soft. And during this time, we see as a Saiyan space pod flies by, and they're like, "Yo, should we shoot this out of the sky?" And Cooler's like, "No, no, no, don't do that. So Frieza's too soft. This is a seed that he sowed, so he has to deal with it." So ultimately, we see as that space pod flies away, and it is in fact the space pod you think it is. It is Goku's space pod, and it's headed to Earth. And we also see that they mention about how it's headed to Earth and all that. But yeah, so then after that, we end up seeing as we swap to Goku and all of them, Gohan, Chi-Chi, all chilling at home, and then we see as Goku's, I mean not Goku, but Gohan studying, and obviously Icarus pulls up for the movie High Dragon. And we see as everything's going well, we actually see as Goku supports Gohan's studies, but actually he's just getting a rush so they can ultimately go camping. So we see as ultimately Oolong, Krillin, Goku and Gohan end up going camping after Gohan's done with the studying and all that. So they go out there, they're doing their thing. Goku goes to hunt for a fish, and Krillin, Gohan, and Oolong are setting up the fire. We see as Gohan uses his martial arts skill to chop up a log. And then everything seems to be going swell. We see as Goku catches his fish, and then we swap to the perspective of the Cooler group. And this actually happened a little bit prior to the camping trip. Where we see as they're on a planet which they have utterly decimated. There is nothing left, and they ultimately learn that Frieza has in fact been defeated, or that Frieza in fact was defeated by some Saiyan. And ultimately, they learn that it is the Saiyan that was from Earth. So they're like, you know what, I'm going to go, Cooler's like, you know what, I'm going to go and do what Frieza could not, because Frieza was a weakling, and I have to go deal with his problem, because it's it has placed a smear of disgrace upon our family. But yeah, so we see as ultimately he ends up going to Earth, and then as everything's seeming to be going good at the camping trip, we see as everyone starts to notice something. And then ultimately we see as three of actually the first of Cooler's goons pulls up, which is named Salzer. Now the three goons are Salzer, Dore, and Nace. And we see as Salzer pulls up, and he starts putting the beat down to everyone. He starts whooping tail, and then during this time, we see Goku notices as well. So he ends up pulling up to camp while everyone else is getting pretty beat. So we then see as they face up against Goku, and everything seems to be going decent because Goku's like fighting three of them at one time, and he shoots like this three-way blast at them, and they're kind of struggling a bit, but he's still doing pretty good for himself. But then we see as Gohan gets up and tries to fight a little bit more, but ultimately in his endeavor, he almost gets attacked by Cooler, who is now here on the scene. And Cooler actually shoots a death ray at him, and Goku has to cover for Gohan, and he gets blasted, and then falls into the water and floats away. And luckily, Goku's able to get a return key blast launched at Cooler, but this doesn't end up doing much. However, Cooler realizes now the true strength of Goku, and we see as they float away in the river, and everyone's like, yo, they're dead now, lucky us, but Cooler's like, no, they're not dead at all. So we see as ultimately Gohan and, Goku end up traveling to like this little, rocky area, and Gohan tries to nurse Goku back to health, but he's ultimately unsuccessful. And we see as all of Cooler's gang, or what the trio is called, or the Cooler Armed Forces, and, they're all destroying around and all that, trying to flush out Goku and Gohan, but they're unable to do so. And we see then as Oolong and Krillin start to search for him as well. Oolong, Krillin, and Icarus. And they're searching until ultimately they find him buried under a bunch of rocks, where they end up removing all the rocks, and then they get to talking and all of that. And ultimately, Krillin tasks Gohan with going to Karin Tower so he can acquire Senzu Bean. And so we see as Gohan and Icarus then go out and fly towards Karin Tower. Now, one thing that confuses me is that the reason why he took Icarus is because Gohan can't use Bukujutsu, but we see him use it legit like less than 10 minutes later. So I don't know really what was up with that. But yeah, so what we see is they ultimately end up flying to Karin Tower, and Icarus is getting a little bit fatigued, but he has time to break since they get there, and Gohan ends up going up Karin Tower, where he ends up meeting with Karin, and Karin's like, I'm not going to give you any Senzu Beans because you started halfway up the pole, so you got to go all the way back down and then go back up, and he's like, well, crap, I don't really got the time, but I'll follow your rules. But ultimately, Yajirobe is like, nah, kid, take this bag of Senzu Beans, and Karin is a little bit apprehensive about it, but ultimately, he allows him to go since he was so kind, at least Gohan was so kind and polite. And they mention about how Goku has a really good kid under his belt. And we then see as Yajirobe also gives him another singular Senzu Bean, just kind of spite Karin. Yeah, ultimately Gohan ends up jumping down, hops on Icarus, and heads back to the cave, where we see as briefly, Icarus becomes fatigued again, but ultimately Gohan ends up giving him a Senzu Bean, and we see as he can once again speed up and head towards the cave. However, this boost of energy ends up leading to the trio, or the Cooler Armed Forces, noticing this increase in ki by Icarus, and they start to pursue him. And as they're pursuing him, we see as Gohan is about hit with a blast, but ultimately Piccolo shows up, and he's ready to throw hands. So we see at first as Piccolo sends Gohan off, and then he sends another, because at first Icarus was actually shot out of the sky, and we see him tumble down to the ground, but Gohan was able to use Buku Jutsu here somehow, which is just flying. He tells him to continue to head off. So Dore ends up heading towards Gohan, but Piccolo ends up sending like a seeking beam towards him, and which ultimately ends up getting him. And then we see as Piccolo is left to fight Sauzer and Nace, and he predominantly fights Nace to begin with. Yeah, so we see as they're fighting, and the battle between him and Nace is going pretty well until ultimately Nace pulls like this paralytic, like electrocution move, which is kind of similar to one that Jackie Chun used in the 21st Tenkaichi Budokai. But he's using this, and ultimately Piccolo's acting like he's struggling, and then Nace comes up and he's like, yeah, let's see how long you can handle this. And then Piccolo grabs him, and he said, yeah, good question. And he electrocutes him to death, and bro burns to a crisp. Straight aura. But yeah, then we see now as Piccolo begins to go after Sauzer. And as he prepares to go after Sauzer, he ends up hearing Gohan say something. I can't remember exactly what he says. And Piccolo looks back, gets distracted, and Cooler blasts Piccolo right through like the shoulder area. So then we see ultimately as Gohan is able to actually pull up to the cave that all of them are in. But as he's going, we see as he's able to get the Senzu Beans there, and Krillin and them are all like celebrating all that. But then Sauzer pulls up, and Sauzer actually burns the bag that the Senzu Beans are in. Krillin tries to go up against him, but ultimately fails. And then Gohan's like he's freaking out and all this because now he can't heal his dad because he doesn't have any Senzu. But then he remembers, oh, the one that Yajirobe gave me. So he ends up giving that one to Goku, and then heads out of the cave to look for Icarus and to fight back. But ultimately, he is beaten as well. So we then see as Sauzer is like quickly approaching the cave. He's kind of strutting the stuff, and then we see as his scouter ends up getting some crazy readings. He's going crazy off the charts, and he's like, "What? There shouldn't be anyone in this cave." And it keeps reading until it bursts, and then we see Goku coming out ready to fight Sauzer, and he puts the beat down on Sauzer like some biblical smackdown, and we see ultimately he beats Sauzer, and then he heads up to find Cooler. And Cooler ends up pulling up with Piccolo in his arms, and he's like, yeah, bro, I slimed your homie. And then he throws him down to like Goku, and Goku's like, I'm gonna catch you, Piccolo, no. And then Cooler blasts him, and Piccolo goes flying like toasted. And then Goku's like, oh, Piccolo. And then we see as this form of Cooler and Goku end up going against each other. Now, Cooler is not here because he's getting revenge for Frieza, which is surprisingly, I guess, not really antithetical, but like the direct opposite of like the name of the movie. But he's actually not here for revenge. He's here to reestablish his name as like the strongest in the universe, and to wipe away the scourge that Frieza left on their name by getting defeated by Goku. So we see as he pulls up, and they are preparing to fight. And we see as they fight, and it's pretty equal to begin with. They're kind of going crazy. We see as Goku's able to hit his iconic like rapid gut punches on Cooler, and it seems pretty effective. But ultimately, we see as Cooler begins to get the upper hand, he's like, this is all that Super Saiyan has. And he's like, well, I'm going to show you the power. Since you do have a power for you, I'm going to show you the power that I have above my brother. And it is the fact that he has a fifth form as compared to only Frieza's 4 forms. So we see as Cooler then powers up and transforms into this awesome form. Like, it is sick. I cannot overstate how sick this transformation is. And then we see as he gets like this Optimus Prime face guard, which for some reason just comes out of his suit. But yeah, so we see that, and then he starts to put the beat down on Goku. He's going crazy. He's beating him like everything, and he's playing him like a drum. And we see he continues to beat him until ultimately Goku is beaten pretty bad. He ends up on the ground, and Cooler's like, well, I'm going to kill everyone now because you were a waste of my time. So he ends up going up there, preparing to kill everyone, but then Goku is laying on the ground. He sees a little bird die beside him, and then he thinks of everyone else around him and all of that. And we see as he ultimately, like, Cooler's preparing to destroy the world, but then we see as Goku ends up getting up, going Super Saiyan because of the rage he feels about the damage and destruction that Cooler has caused to his planet, and he is ready to go toe-to-toe with Cooler. And we see as he does exactly that. He gets up, he starts putting the return beat down on Cooler. He starts getting pugilistic in this John and going crazy on Cooler. And this fight is genuinely awesome. Like, I love this fight. And ultimately, Cooler's like, well, oh, actually, one of the big things we saw before Cooler, like, this is right before Goku went Super Saiyan. I just thought it was really cool. I don't know, I forgot to mention it beforehand, before Goku transformed. We see as he tries to attempt a Kamehameha on 5th form Cooler, and Cooler legit travels up it. Like Sukuna does with Jacob's Ladder in Volume 30 of Jujutsu Kaisen. He legit travels up the Kamehameha and punches Goku. Like, it was devious, like, insulting. But back to the main thing. Okay, so we see Super Saiyan Goku is fighting 5th form Cooler and doing pretty well, but then ultimately 5th form Cooler is like, I'm pulling out the Death Ball, which Frieza used to destroy Planet Vegeta. He's like, I'm going to destroy everything. And he built up this massive Death Ball, and then he casts it down toward Goku, and Goku's like, I'm not going to let this destroy the Earth. So we see as Goku's pushing, he's struggling, and ultimately it looks like it hits the Earth because Goku just did not have enough strength to fight it. But he ends up repelling it, and he sends it back at Cooler, and Cooler is caught behind the Mirror Force because he's using Bokujutsu, so he doesn't really have a solid platform to propel against it. And we see as Cooler is pushed until he gets all the way into the sun. He has to de-transform because he's lost so much power. He goes back to his first form, presumably his first form. I don't know exactly. But I presume so because it looks similar to Frieza's, but he just doesn't have horns. But then ultimately he gets disintegrated in the sun and releases this like harrowing wail. And then we see as everyone is exhausted, but everyone is okay. And we see then as Gohan's looking around, he's like, yo, where's Piccolo? We gotta find Piccolo. And he's calling for Piccolo. And then we see some rubble starts moving around. I was like, oh yeah, this is Piccolo. No, Saucer is alive and everyone else is exhausted, so Saucer has a chance to do some real damage here. So everyone's kind of freaking out. And then out of nowhere, a special beam cannon blasts through Saucer and bro is dead. Where did this come from? Gohan walks around, he's like, Piccolo, where are you, Piccolo? Piccolo's like hundreds of yards away. Bro sniped this John crazy style, no-scoped him, and we see as he ends up getting a handful of water, he's like there's this little like spring, he ends up, and then looking over his shoulder, straight Piccolo aura. And it was phenomenal. That's how the movie ends. Like, great scene. Because honestly, I love Saucer. Saucer was like one of my favorite side characters. He was my favorite side character of all these Dragon Ball movies so far. Like, he was good. And like, this is probably my favorite one so far. Because I loved it. I loved Cooler's transformation. I loved Saucer, like I said. And I just loved the battles. Like, I loved Piccolo in this. Like, it was a great movie. Like, I feel like this is where the Dragon Ball Z movies started getting their strides. Like, I haven't watched any more after this yet. But like, this seems like this is an improvement. Like, it is a good movie. Like, really good. I would recommend like anyone watching this. But yeah, this movie was goated. I loved it. I loved like I said, the 5th form of Cooler transformation. I loved, I can understand how much Saucer was a sick villain. Like, he was really cool. And I especially love that scene where he walks up to the cave and his power levels, the Scouter just starts going crazy. And I was like, whoa, this is some aura. I know Goku's about to hop out of this John and put the beat down on Saucer. But yeah, that's how that really was for Cooler's Revenge. Like, I really enjoyed it. I would highly recommend it. Like, this is, out of the Dragon Ball Z movies so far, it is my favorite, by far. Well, not by far, but like by a substantial margin. Because like, I would say Lord Slug is probably second, but like, Cooler's Revenge is just up there. Like, it is a good movie. Like, I'm ready to see how any of them will be able to top this one. Like, I know they probably will be. I know, like, Broly Legendary Super Saiyan, at least the first one, and maybe ones like Fusion Reborn or Wrath of the Dragon, but I'm ready to see. But yeah. That's all that really was for Cooler's Revenge. That's all I really have for episode 140 of Show Review. So thank you very much for watching.